Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of selection and masking methods. So in the previous lecture, we just quickly went through and introduced the different object selection methods. But now we're going to get a little bit more advanced and I'm going to show you guys how you can combine different selection and masking methods, and I'm also going to show you how to edit your selection. So if you accidentally left something out or you wanted to add to it, you can do that as well. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with this file right here that's labeled this, and then the others you're going to do on your own. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, save link as, and on my Creative Cloud I have a Mod 3 folder and I'm just going to drop it in there. Now if you wanted more of a review on how to save or how I like to save, please watch our first lecture. And you can see that the Barcelona is saved right here, and I don't have my computer automatically open up JPEGs in Photoshop. So what I can do is click on this little arrow and go to Show in Finder, and I believe in Windows it just says Show in Explorer. And then in here, once it opens, if I don't want to open it directly from Photoshop, I can right click, open with, and Photoshop should be on your list. Okay? Or again, you can go straight into Photoshop and go File, Open, and then here's, I'm already in Mod 3, that was really easy. There's Barcelona and hit Open. Either way, since this is still in the early parts of our class while we're just getting used to working with Photoshop, I'm going to do some basics every lecture for the next few weeks, and then you're going to be off on your own. All right, let's start by backing up a little bit. So for this first part of the lecture, I'm actually going to kind of lean on what we just went over, and I just want you to watch this part so you guys can understand the concept. I'm doing some editing here again that you don't need to know about. We're just gonna work with this file, and then we're gonna hop back into Barcelona where you guys can follow along with me. Now I mentioned, again, you guys are so lucky to have this new object selection tool. It does work really well. And I'm going to go ahead and use that again to try and isolate this shoe. And what you might notice is just like last time when I used it, maybe the same as when you used it. Let me zoom in just a little bit. It forgot to grab the top of my shoe. It grabbed too much down here, and it kind of didn't grab enough right there. So what I'm about to show you is how to mix selection methods and then how to kind of add and subtract to your selection as well. So if we look here at the toe, let me just ask you, is the toe an addition or a subtraction to our selection? The answer is it's an addition to our selection. So we want to add this portion right here. And so to add something to a selection, you use your keyboard. If you hold the Shift key, take a look at my cursor. When I hold Shift, what happens graphically? Do you see a little plus sign comes up? Let's try it with object selection. It may or may not work, but I'm going to hold Shift, grab this part right here, and it actually got it for me. I'm pretty impressed. Now, sometimes it won't get it. Like over here on the shoelace, I'm just going to say that it won't get it. I won't even try. I'm just going to say I tried, it didn't work. What you can do in that case is you can grab another selection method. So I'm actually going to come up here and grab my poly lasso. Okay. And I'm going to hold Shift again. And I'm going to zoom in so you can really see what I'm doing. What I need to do is hold Shift. There's the plus sign. And I'm tracing around the laces the best I can. Okay, so not only do I need to trace around the laces, but I also need to tell Photoshop to go all the way around here too so that it grabs everything. So I'm just going to go, for this part, I don't have to be exact because it's still going to be part of it. And then once you get close to your starting point, go ahead and double click. Oops, maybe single click, my bad. I'm going to do Control Z. It was a single click. So I hit Control Z to bring it back, and you can see that there's my shoelace. Let me do this shoelace that same way. So again, look at my cursor. I'm going to hit Shift for the plus sign, and I'm going to click to start tracing around what I want to add. And then I'm going to come back around, make sure I stay with what's already been added, and then I just click back at the starting point. Plus sign again. This time I'm just going to click over here. The reason why I want to go around, let me show you what I want to go around. If I just come back and click here, see how it missed all of this? Then I have to do it one more time. That's why you want to go around that area, so you can really encompass all of it. So that time I hit return to close it. And then up here, I'm even going to change the selection method again. Let me go to Quick Selection Tool. Let's see what it does. So Shift, click there. See how that's way too big? Not what I wanted to do. I'm going to undo it. I'm going to hit Control Z. Let me try Magnetic Lasso Tool. So Shift to add it. I'm going to go all the way over here. So again, I did the backspace to get the star. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how I am adding to my selection. And I'm coming down here to kind of move my screen, and I want this top half of the shoe too. Whoops. So when I click and it goes away, I hit escape, it brings it back. Phew. I have to remember to hit Shift every time I want to add. And I hope you can hear me clicking. I'm just kind of clicking to let it know, like, yep, you're doing a good job. You can see if I go too far away, sometimes it doesn't do a good job of selecting. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control 0 to see everything again. And I'm going to use my Alt rollerball up to zoom in here. Now this is the opposite. I want to get rid of it. So to get rid of something, I want to hold Alt. So if I hold Alt down, do you see how a minus pops up? So this means I want to get rid of this. This is going to get a little too hard to do a magnetic lasso just because the shadow and the sole of the shoe will start to look the same. So I'm going to right click and go to a poly lasso and try to just trace around the sole of the shoe. So this might take some getting used to. You know, you've only been working in Photoshop for probably less than a few hours. That's why we want to get a lot of practice in this week. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and mask it. Yeah, that's a pretty clean mask. So what I've done here, again, just to kind of take it from the top, I used the wand, the object selection tool, to do a quick overall. And then I used the same object selection tool and I used Shift to add. I hit Alt to subtract, and I even went around and changed it back to the different lasso tools. So hopefully the point of what you're getting is that you can combine different selection tools, and you can also subtract and add to your selection method by using your keyboard shortcuts, which are Shift and Alt. Okay. Now let's hop into the exercise that we're going to do together, which is this Barcelona chair. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now for this assignment, what I want you to do is I want you to mask and isolate the object using a combination of selection and masking methods of your choice. So you get to decide what you want to do. So for this one, let's say you want to try object selection again. So what I'd like to do is I am going to just drag around this. And it does a pretty good job, but see how it kind of missed the bottoms of the chair? It got weird shadows in here. So I have to do another combination, add, subtract. So for this one, if I zoom in, I can do shift to add, and let's see if I can get kind of the edges of that chair. Well, it's doing an okay job. See how I keep trying to add it and it just doesn't see it? Sometimes it's actually easier, I'm going to hit undo, to go through and trace around some of these. So I'm going to go back to the poly lasso, and remember to add, I hit shift, and I'm just going to click around this. And really, this one is up to you. So if you like the magnetic lasso where it really just attaches to it, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get this part, and I even want like the black of the chair, so I'm even going to get this part right here. I'm going to make that a little bit smaller. Yeah, the object selection tool didn't do great in this one. I'm just going to kind of go back to where I started. So I got this part in. Now down here, again, I'm using the Alt and then roller ball in to get in here. I want to get rid of that. So to get rid of something, I hold Alt and I trace around this area. So I'm basically cutting this out of my selection. Again, I want to go around the whole thing, and it gets rid of it for me. Down here is going to be a little bit crazy with all this adding and selecting. So I mean, you can decide, do you want to go back and, you know, just trace around the whole thing? Like retrace around the whole thing by hitting Control D, or you can keep going through and kind of keep adding and taking away like this. There, we got all of that. I'm going to use the Alt to get rid of this. So Alt shows the minus. If you have an iPad or like a Surface Pro with a pencil, there are also Photoshop apps that you can use to isolate objects using a pen. I love using that. I think it's a lot easier to trace around using a stylus than a mouse. Okay, so you can see that all of these things, it's not hard, but it definitely takes some time. It's an investment of time for sure. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this part too. So again, this was a big one. There are so many ways that you could have done this. Again, maybe you didn't use object selection, maybe you went through on the first try and really just traced it. I always like to try the object selection first. I'm like, okay, let's make this easy on myself by letting Photoshop do most of the work to begin with. Gosh, I think I started somewhere over here. Okay, and I double clicked when I wasn't sure if I could find the end or not. And as you can see, I like to get in nice and close to my screen. I zoom in quite a bit. I know it looks a little bit pixelated. I'm zoomed in so much, but I really like to see where I'm working. Okay, here's another part to add. So this whole time I've pretty much been subtracting, but now I hit shift to add, and I trace. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and mask it. And again, I'm just trying to isolate that background because if I wanted to render this into a scene, I don't want a background. So now we've got something else going on. I've made a mask, but see how I have this white area right here? So this is where it's going to be a little bit different. This gets even more advanced. What I want to do here is I'm going to go to the quick selection tool, and I'm going to make my brush smaller. See how it's ridiculously big? When it's ridiculously big, it's pretty much going to try to select everything that's close to it. So if I make my brush smaller to where it's only kind of touching the white area, I'm going to click into it now. And do you see that because the brush only touched the white area, it only grabbed the white? Now that I have this, here's something to think about. I have my layer mask, and I want to add this to it. Okay, it's already been created and I want to add to it. So thinking back to photoshopping for gold, what color masks? Black, right? So if you look right now, what color is selected on my screen? White. And if you remember the shortcut to change the color, it's X. So now I've got black selected as my color. I've got this area selected. Now I just need to get black here. So up until this point, we've gone over brush. So you know, see how big this brush is? Even though my brush is huge, hopefully you can see that the only place where it's actually coloring in is where I have selected. Here's something that's even easier. Instead of brushing it in, I'm going to hit Control Z. Actually, I'm going to go to my history. I'm going to get rid of all those brush tools. See how I can go back to quick selection? You can also use something called the bucket. Now on your screen, you most likely don't see a bucket, and that's because the bucket tool is hidden under G for gradient. So hit G for gradient. B already belongs to B for brush. So we actually need G for gradient, and then we right click and go down to the paint bucket tool. And now here, this makes it so I can just click in here once and make sure you're on your mask and it takes out that white area. Now I'm going to go back again to my wand. I'm going to grab this area. So it did a pretty good job of grabbing that white area. So now that this is selected, if I hit G, I go back to my bucket, I can fill in the paint here too. Now the key is, I'm going to hit Control Z, make sure you're working on your mask and not your layer. You don't want to be filling this in with the color black. That's not what we're looking for. We really just want to be working on that mask. And then eventually, whoops, I hit Control S instead of zooming out, I'm sorry, Control D. And then eventually I get this whole chair isolated to where you can be able to pull that into another rendering or another scene that you might be working on. And again, it might not be a chair, it could be a person or a plant, a building, a window. There's so many elements that you might want to Photoshop into it. So again, with this, you could have followed me exactly, you could have tried your own, but the main point that I wanted to make is you can combine the different selection tools, and you can also add and subtract from your selection. So if you feel comfortable, you can pause or stop the lecture now, but I'm going to go ahead and show you this Barcelona chair one more time from the top, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I might trace around the whole thing this time. So again, go ahead and pause. You can come back if you need a little bit more help. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this one more time. I've made a copy of the layer without the mask, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. So if you wanted to follow along again, I would just reopen the Barcelona or re-download it and start over again. I'm going to go ahead and work in the same file, but you can have two different copies if you'd like. Now in the first example, I use the object selection just because that's really easy and straightforward. But this time, maybe I'll do a quick selection tool and then I'll undo it and then I will do a lasso. So if I use the quick selection tool, again, my brush tells me what it's selecting. So you can see I have a pretty small brush. And it does a pretty good job of getting the chair. It's still got that white strip right here again. And again, I just kind of click around. You don't have to click and hold, but I just kind of click around to try and add the different areas to my selection. Hopefully you can hear how often I'm clicking. This actually does a pretty good job. And as I mentioned before, this isn't hard. It just takes time. It's a little tedious, but we want to get good at this and comfortable because this will make a big difference in our work if we can have things that are masked off precisely. We don't want like a white kind of shadow around everything of where we masked off. So this isn't too bad. You can see right here that really did not go well. So if I want to subtract again, I hit the Alt key. It's really small, but there is a subtraction right there. And I'm just going along this edge, and it does a pretty good job. So quick selection tool, again, I think works really great. This area is fine, but I want to add this leg. It got left out. Whoops. Let's re-add that back in. So this area gets a little bit tricky. Now here, I'm going to hit Alt to see if I can subtract the white. Yep, it did a great job getting rid of that. So I know I still have some to clean up here, but if I add a layer mask now that it's been selected, the quick selection tool actually did a pretty good job. I do have to do some cleanup down here. One thing that's a little bit fuzzy, that leg, I don't know, that could look like a weird leg, like it's a little bit feathered. So we'll see how that goes. I'm still going to do it one more time. I'm going to do it 3 times here. As promised, I said I was going to do the quick selection, and then I'm going to select it with the lasso. So I'm going to quickly make a copy of this. Again, this is kind of behind the scenes. Don't worry about that. Let me get rid of this mask. I'm just going to delete it. And I'm back to a new layer that just has the chair. So for this one, I'm going to start with the, I don't love the magnetic lasso tool. My husband, who also uses Photoshop quite a bit, the magnetic tool is kind of, it's his jam, but I'm definitely a polygonal lasso tool. But I like my husband, so I'm going to go ahead and do the magnetic tool, kind of like a little shout out to him. See, this is why I don't love it, because sometimes even when I'm really close to the line, I don't want this bump out right here. Come on. See, I don't want that bump out. Okay, I lied. I'm going to hit escape. I'm canceling that. I'm going to do the poly. And then this time I get to click every little bit and say, okay, this is where I want it to be. Maybe I just don't have the attention span for the magnetic one. And that's going to be an ugly turn right there, I know. But I just wanted to show you some more options. So if you want this to really look good, you'll probably want to click a lot more than I am. But being that I've already done this several times, I kind of want to hurry and get it over with. So let's just pretend I'm doing this perfectly. This is going to look super photoshopped. It's not even going to look photoshopped. It's just going to look pretty terrible, I would say. This is a total hack job. And then when I'm done, I'm going to hit return on this one. So hitting return kind of closes that selection. And I can throw a mask on here, and you know, it does look like part of the chair got lobbed off. And again, going back to our photoshopping for gold, if you hit the slash key, which is right above the return, you can see where the mask is. So you can see I still need to kind of add it here. I need to add it here and here. There's lots of areas of cleanup that I need to do on the mask by selecting and then filling it in with the color black by either using the brush or the bucket. Either one of those will work. So give this a try, and if you're watching this before Tuesday or Thursday, if you need some one-on-one help, again, you can reach out to me or chat with me. We can do a WebEx or a walkthrough. But remember, this is your first way of doing it. Your first object, and then you have several more. You have 3 more chairs. They're kind of iconic chairs, and then 1 more object of your choice. And then we're also going to do a discussion where you post something else of your choice, and I'll let you take a look at that since it's a separate assignment. But that's what I'm looking for. And remember, with these, I will, because this isn't the exercise, this is the assignment, I will be going through each one to see how precisely it has been masked. And I'll take a look at your work just to see how it looks. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me this week. And please spend the time to get comfortable with these different selection and masking methods. Thanks again. Talk to you guys soon.